I remember walking up to the Pentagon in 1989 for my first day in the Army Chief of Chaplain's office. Looking at that impressive five-sided building, its cold gray limestone silhouetted against the Potomac skyline, I realized my life was about to change significantly. It's a day like that when you think about how you got there. I was there because I was just one of the women who chose to be a part of the birth of a new idea. In the mid-1970s, the Women's Army Corps was eliminated, and the Army was directed to integrate women into the regular force. The Chaplain Corps was one of the very last branches in the Army to yield to that directive. When I look back on those early days, I recall how progress came only at a very dear price. Yet the progress did come, a step at a time, and we were all honored to be a part of it. What helped me immensely was rising above the human sense to a more spiritual sense of progress. Someday a woman will rise to the highest place of distinction in the Army Chaplain Corps. Perhaps on that day, she and others will recognize that accomplishment was not only an individual accomplishment, but a collective accomplishment as well. On that day, we would all stand, hand in hand, marking the years of ministry invested in breaking that gender barrier in Camouflage Ceiling. In my recollections, I have tried to include significant events that were moving, challenging, and uplifting as I grew into my calling. I claim no credit for the words that often came to mark the day, but I was blessed to listen and hear God telling me how to proceed. There is certainly wisdom in the book of Psalms, as it reminds us, we spend our years as a tale that is told. There's always something distinctive and special about someone's first. When I was accepted for my church's chaplain training program, I left Iowa with one suitcase and my savings of only $250. I had no job and no place to live, and I hadn't applied for seminary at Boston University School of Theology. I just felt I was on the right path for my life. I wanted to be a chaplain for the Christian Science Church, my own and loved denomination that had blessed my life so immensely. When I arrived at our church headquarters, I went to the office of the supervisor for our chaplain training program. He told me to go to the Boston University and inquire about entering their seminary program. I walked a few miles to the campus and somehow wandered into a building. I remember explaining to a man that I was from Iowa and had come there for seminary. I explained I had no money but would work for a year. I was under the impression it was too late to start this year. I was going to work to get funds for the next year. I asked if I could find out about the cost. He seemed quite moved and told me I could start seminary now. He pointed out a window and showed me which building was a seminary. Then he wrote some notes in envelopes and told me where late registration was being held. He told me to present the envelopes to the bursar and that I would start classes in a couple of days. The envelopes must have been vouchers for my tuition because I never paid a penny of tuition myself. I returned to our church center feeling a great sense of joy, having seen that God's love had indeed guided me. As I was waiting for the elevator, the doors opened and a woman walked out. She paused a moment and looked pensive. She told me she didn't know why she was asking me this, but did I need a place to live? I told her yes, but that I didn't know how I'd pay for it. She explained that one of her roommates was getting married that weekend. Oddly, the security guard at the entrance point chimed in saying, "Why don't you work security?" Because it was the 1970s, I asked him if they let women do that. He admitted he didn't know, but offered to take me to the security supervisor's office. I told the supervisor I was starting seminary and needed to work. He laughed and said, "Well, let's try it on the swing shift." By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I had been admitted to seminary, I had a place to live, and I had a job. God had certainly met my every need. One bitterly cold Christmas in Michigan, I experienced something that revealed a more profound meaning of this season. Although our family income was quite modest, my mom loved decorating for Christmas. As time passed, she collected enough ornaments to have 2 trees. On Christmas Eve, my dad came home and immediately began to pack up one of the trees. He explained that a family whose dad worked for him had just been evicted from their home. They had nothing for Christmas. He had allowed them to move into an abandoned house out at his gravel pit. It had no electricity, and their dad decided they'd make a fire in the fireplace and attempt to sleep there that night. My dad suggested we could all give one of our unopened gifts to the family. We all bundled up and took the whole load out to the family. In the quiet of the night, we knocked on the door. You could initially see the despair in the family's eyes. We said nothing, not wanting to embarrass them in any way. We simply began to set up the tree and place the presents. In the dim light of the small fire, you could see that the children were shyly clinging to their mom. When they realized what we were doing, the mother and children began to weep. We all hugged, and we left. Even as a child, I realized that the most memorable gifts are given, not received. This experience, this feeling of the brotherhood of man, touched me so deeply. I knew I wanted to continue to do whatever I could to comfort God's people when they were in need. After 28 years of service in the Army, it was apparent that the new idea of women being military chaplains had indeed been born and acknowledged as just and practical through the inspired work of a core group of workers in the vineyard. With this fulfillment in mind, I could leave the service with a sense of satisfaction and gratitude. Just before his crucifixion and resurrection, Jesus Christ gave his followers this counsel. In the Gospel of John, "Whoever serves me must follow me, and where I am, my servant also will be. My Father will honor the one who serves me." It was my honor to serve our Lord and to do so in the U.S. Army.